Hey, fellow mathers, welcome to the podcast where math is figure-outable.
We're popping in here real quick to share that we'll be hosting another Math is Figure-Outable challenge.
Whoo!
Registration's not open yet, but we'll let you know when it is. The best way to get all the information is to join our newsletter.
So you can join our newsletter at www.mathisfigureoutable.com/get-newsletter. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/get-newsletter.
Mark your calendars now. The challenge will run from May 14th to May 16th. Join the email list at www.mathisfigureoutable.com/get-newsletter to get all the details.
Hey, fellow mathers, welcome to the podcast where math is figure-outable. I'm Pam, a former mimicker turned mather.
And I'm Kim, a reasoner who now knows how to share her thinking with others. At Math is Figure-Outable, we are on a mission to improve math teaching.
We know that algorithms are amazing historic achievements, but they are not good teaching tools because mimicking step-by-step procedures can actually trap students into using less sophisticated reasoning than the problems are intended to develop.
In this podcast, we help you teach mathing, building relationships with your students and grappling with mathematical relationships.
Because we grapple with each other, and you're going to hear maybe some of that today. We invite you to join us to make math more figure-outable. Can we like the word grapple? Yeah, I do.
I think you say it more than I do, but I like it. Yeah,
yeah. We did martial arts in our family for quite a while. Sort of the reasons we stopped, but it was they were not good reasons. It was health reasons actually. But we really enjoyed that family thing, and I just loved grappling. I don't know.
Yeah,
so maybe that says something about me. But getting on the floor, or it was good.
It's like roughhousing.
Yeah,
you had boys.
Yeah. Well, in fact, one of my favorite days of all was one time when Craig moved up into the adult class, and it was the first time I'd ever sparred with him, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool! Like, bring this on." He was kind of a little kid. He's totally grown up now, but he was kind of a smaller kid, and I don't even know how old he was. Anyway, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a little kid whipping me. He was quite good.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be good at martial arts. I think I would just resort to tickling or something because I cannot stand to lose. But
what I struggled with was pulling punches. I would actually pull my punches.
What does that mean?
It means that I wouldn't hit full force. And my instructors were like, "No, you have to actually practice hitting full force, or you're going to be, out in self-defense, and you're going to pull your punch." And I was like, "Okay, but I don't want to hurt anybody." They're like, hit. Anyway, yes. All right. Hey, should we talk about math?
Sure. Okay. So last week we spent some time talking about choosing a problem string. And there are lots of things to think about when you're choosing a problem string, but now you have your string, you've chosen. Now what?
Yeah.
Lots of preparation still.
Bam. Lots to do, lots to think about. Don't let that keep you from doing problem strings, but we thought since you're trying them, we'll give you some kind of insight into things that we think about. All right. So Kim, to have a problem string to refer to, we're going to do a quick problem string here. So first problem, what is 314 plus 400?
714.
And I'm just going to quickly draw a number line with 300, a huge jump of 400. It's actually not that big on my paper. But relatively big, and then you landed on 714. Next problem. What is 314 plus 399?
713.
Because
plus 400 was 714, but I'm going back one to get to 713 because 399 is one less than 400.
Nice. And so 314 plus 399 is 713, one less than the problem you had before. How about 428 plus 300?
728.
So I've just sketched down really quickly 400. Oh, I didn't say what I did for the problem before. So the problem before, I wrote down the same problem that you'd had before, the 314 plus 400, and then I backed up one to 700 to one before the 714. All right. So this time I have scooted my number line to the right because the first number line I wrote down started at 300. This number line is going to start at 428. So I've scooted it to the right, which is kind of why I said I drew a big number line, but not so long that it covered the whole paper because I needed to be able to scoot over now. So that 428 plus a big jump of 300 not as big as the jump that I had before, because the jump before was 400. So this is 300. And you said that it landed on 728. Okay,
Mhm.
next problem. Do you want to guess what my next problem is?
I'm going to go plus 299.
Good guess. It was plus 298. That's an excellent guess. What do you got?
726.
So how'd you do it?
Plus 300 would be 728,
Mm-hmm.
but I want two less than that. So I went back two to get to 726.
So I redrew the number line, starting at 428, making sure my 428 lined it up.
Lined it up.
Wow, with the problem above it, with the number line above it, and then I jumped the same 300, so that line lined up with the 728 above it, and then I backed up two, and so now the 726 is before to the left of the 728. Cool. Next problem. How about 400 and where am I? 457 plus 498, but I'm not going to give you a helper for that one. And I'm curious if you follow the same pattern as the sort of two sets of problems that we've done before, could you think of a helper for 457 plus 498?
Well, yes, I can.
Okay.
I'm going to add plus 500.
So
because
457 plus 500? Okay.
That's 957.
Okay.
And I'm going to back up two to get to 955.
So I'm going to admit, now that we've done this problem string, maybe I should tell you what I did. So I wrote down your 457, the helper that you made up, and I added a huge jump. So I've also gone just a little to the right with the 457. So it's not underneath the 428. It's a little to the right, 457. And then I've done the biggest jump I have on my paper now is plus 500. You said that was 957. And then I didn't redraw it for the plus 498. I just backed up two and then wrote 957, 955. Is that right? Yeah. So then I'm kind of stuck on where I wanted to go, which is why I wasn't really paying attention to what you got. I'm realizing as I gave you that problem, I wish I would have actually said for that last problem, not 457 plus 498. That's too much like the problem before where I added 298. I wish I would have done 457 plus something like 495 instead of 98, like a different. The first problem was 399. The second one was 298. For the third one, I shouldn't have done 498. I should have done something more like 495. That would have been a better, I don't know, ta-da. Like you might not have anticipated it as much. And I wouldn't maybe have a kid just kind of looking, well, the first problem was back one and the second problem was back two. I bet the third problem is back three, like some weird pattern that's not really holding true. I want them to actually be thinking about the problem. Anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know.
Well, it's good to know, to hear as the listeners become problem string writers. For now, we're suggesting that it's great to choose a
pre-written.
But looking at the numbers in a pre-written string and wondering why they have those numbers, is really, really helpful.
Yeah, and as you do a lot of pre-written problem strings, you might get to a point where you're like, that's almost too formulaic. I'm going to tweak that last one and give it a go, like see what happens. And I'll be honest, there's some times where I've written a string where later I look back on it, kind of like right now, and go, that's a little too formulaic. I wish I would have done a little bit more of a change there. So yeah, like as soon as you've kind of done a few, you get a feel for it, feel free to kind of start to play a little bit. You can be kind of playful. Cool. So, this idea of looking at a problem string and really thinking about the facilitation and the modeling and everything, we had an experience, Kim, where we were filming a problem string, and a colleague of ours who I love and respect and so grateful that we've been invited into her classroom, Abby Sanchez, is a high school mathematics teacher here in the state of Texas. And she and I have worked together for several years. She's a great, great person. And super interesting. One day we were filming in her classroom, and you were, especially at that point, hadn't done a whole lot of thinking about teaching high school math. Like you took high school math, but you hadn't done a lot of thinking about high school math. And I had invited you that day to really kind of be a pedagogy check, like help me think about the teacher moves and everything, not so much the math. And Abby was doing a string that I had written. And in the middle of that string, you were like, and you like grabbed me and I'm like, hey, the cameras are rolling. What are you doing? Like, don't bug me.
And I kept bugging you.
You kept bugging me. And you like, I don't even remember. I think you like pointed to something in the string and you're like, it would have been better this way. And I was like, what? And I couldn't, I don't know, this is a little bit about me. I don't know if I can think about two things at once. And so I kind of just like shooed you away. I was like, hey, give me a minute. Let her finish the like, let's turn the cameras off and then let me think about it. And you said, I think the string would be better this way. I don't think that's quite the way you said it. What you said
Yeah.
was, what is she going for? If she's going for this, how come she didn't ask this? Like I could see your brain moving. Like, I think it's almost like you said, I think I know where she's going. Wouldn't this have worked better? But you said it in a really inquisitive, curious, not a like, Pam, you're a dork kind of way. It was
Well,
like,
and I think the reason that I was talking to you about it is because we were going to do that string in other classes.
oh, you know what? I think I'm telling the story wrong. You're right. I think it was while Abby was practicing. I don't
No,
think the cameras were on yet. Were
I
the
think I think it was the first class. It was being filmed,
Okay.
and we had like one or two more classes because she switched classes.
Right.
And I was like, hey, like, what about this? But you were watching Abby because she was being filmed, and you were watching to make sure that it was going, and you were running the shoot.
Yeah.
And so I was probably should have saved my poking for a different time.
So interestingly, I said, what you tried to tell me what you would change. And I said, and I don't even know if I was distracted or whatever, but for whatever reason, whether I said write it down or you just decided to, you wrote down a new string that was kind of like the pre-written one, but
Yeah.
with some tweaks, a few tweaks. But next to each problem, you wrote just a little bit of help for Abby. Like I know you wrote for one of them, you said something like, why is this happening? And for one of them, you said, have we seen this before? And for one of them, you said something like, wait, what? Like you literally wrote the word wait, comma, what?
I
Question
remember
mark,
that. Yeah.
question mark, exclamation point. And the idea was in the middle of Abby facilitating it, Abby could put the problem up there and then go, wait, what? Like it was a moment for her to show curiosity and for her to go, is that like a typo so the kids could look at the problem and go, let me look at that problem. Like it was a moment, it was a way for you to kind of help her realize the feeling tone for that problem. And so, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I remember writing enough on that paper that you would know what I meant because, at times we have shared brains. And then I remember afterwards when Abby was done, we went up to the board and I kind of talked through it and I asked her, do you want me to write more? She was like, no, I totally got it. And so
it's like she was sharing our brain then as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you talk through it, she's like, no, your notes make sense. And so then she did that kind of tweaked string in the next class. It totally worked better. Those were excellent tweaks. So that has become a thing. Before that, we would just write down the string and we would go to the board and facilitate the string. After that, from that moment on, we call it Kim's notes for a while. We began to make little notes to ourselves next to each of the problems. And especially like if you and I were facilitating a workshop together, when you would do the string, I would be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. And I would take my note card out and make a little note so that I would remember the move you just made that wasn't natural to me, but I loved it. And we started this tradition of making this sort of the facilitation notes page where that we had the string written, but then next to it we had, like say this or do that, and then we also started the tradition of planning what the board would look like. What's that display that we were going to have at the end of the problem string, and kind of including those together. And that's been a great tradition for us to begin and keep going.
Yeah, and it's been really nice because we can share those with the world, right? So it's a way to when we write strings, we can share with the world what we would focus on and when we would focus on something. So the string itself is just a series of problems. And if you're a problem string writer, you know that it is very carefully constructed, one problem after the next.
Very
but
purposeful.
Also very carefully planned is the facilitation. And so in a note card, let's talk about some of the things that you would put on it.
Yeah.
One of the things that you would do when you're preparing a note card is say, okay, I need to think through the math. What is the strategy that's happening? What is the model? So we will take a note card. If you've seen any video of either of us, you've seen us hold a note card in our hand or a Post-it or something,
Uh-huh.
and we will sketch out exactly what we think the final board's going to look like.
Yep.
So we're going to have the exact replica of a miniature model. So if it's a number line, you're going to see the number line for each problem on our note card, and it's gonna be like the layout in a miniature version. And I gotta tell you, Pam, my note cards look amazing. They are 100% fantastically laid out, proportional. And the work that I continue to have to do is the blown up version on the board, because I am a spastic when I'm doing problem strings, and I'm kind of like all over the place, and I'm so into the conversation with the kids that sometimes I look back and I go, wow, that board is slanted, or, it's like towards the end of the string, I get sloppy with my, with my stuff.
Well, and you're left-handed, so I think sometimes
Is
you
that a
tend to
thing? Yeah,
you write up the board,
I
which
do.
is interesting. I tend to go down, like my lines are all a little bit down, yours are a little
Uh-huh.
bit up.
I
Yeah.
just watched a video of me in a fifth grade classroom. And at one point I said on camera to the kids, how could you let me do that? Because I asked them to, I was like, hey, make sure I'm doing a good job. So the layout of the board is there. But what's also super important is the note that we make beside some of the problems. Now, every
Mhm.
single problem might not have a note, but like Pam just mentioned, some of them might have a place that you pause with a little asterisk or
Mhm.
wait, what? Sometimes they might have a pause here,
Mhm.
like let it sit. Some might have sometimes next to mine teacher moves that I don't use as often, but I want to in this particular string. So I might say, did anyone hear what so and so said? Or can anyone restate? Can anyone add on? So things
Or
that I
partner talk, like
mhm,
let's turn and
turn and
talk
talk.
here, give everybody a
Mhm,
chance to kinda get some ideas out before you do any of what you just said, like,
mhm.
yeah, how
I
could you
might
start us off?
Yeah, I might also make a note about when I want to choose more than one strategy. Maybe at the
Mm.
beginning of the string, I might
Mhm.
say take two, or I might
Mhm.
write take over and give and take. Because in the facilitation of the string, you're thinking so much about circulating and about talking to the kids and listening carefully, that if you can free your brain up because you've already planned out the choices that you're going to make,
Mhm.
it can be really helpful.
Yeah, there's a particular string I love to do in high school about function notation and writing the equation of a line. And there's a strategy that I really want to pull out, but it's not natural to me. I don't, in the moment, my brain kind of shuts off. And
Mhm.
so I'll just make a little note on that card and I'll be like, oh, that's right. I want to go find that because somebody in the room has either done it or I could nudge it a little bit and someone will
Mhm.
do it. And then it's super helpful for that one to come out for the second to last problem because it will
Mhm.
influence how people will try to solve the last problem. And so I want to make sure that one comes out and in the moment, I tell you, before I wrote it on my card, I would be in the middle of the problem string and be like, oh, there's something I'm supposed to be looking for now. And I can never remember what it is in that
Yeah.
moment, but until I've written it down. And so I've gotten better over time at realizing this is what I need to write down for this string. It's also true that if you look at my card today, if I'm doing a problem string I've done several times before, you might not see any notes on
Right.
any of the problems because I've done that particular string
Mhm.
a lot of times. But then you'll on this in the exact same card, you'll see the second string and it will have several notes. It just
Mhm.
depends on kind of how well
I'll
you've
tell
planned, how many times you've done it. Go ahead.
I'll tell you where I have the most filled out note card,
Oh yeah,
is when I'm gonna go film.
yeah, for sure,
Um,
sure,
just because I wanna make sure that we put in, maybe some examples of different teacher moves that, I have to think through.
sure.
The other thing is that, you might emphasize something in one string if you I in a same string in one fourth grade classroom. You might emphasize one thing, but in a different year or with a different group of kids, you might not emphasize that one thing because the strategy might be the emphasis, but there might be that you're trying to get kids to talk to each other more. Maybe you're trying to build community with one class that already meshed well with another. And so you might be looking for a purposeful time for them to partner talk. You
Sure.
might you might be trying to start to solidify. So you might have a note that says look back. And so you before you give towards the end of the string, you might look back as a class of what's been happening here.
Yeah, for example, you might like in the string that we did today, you might say, "Hey, before I give you this 457 plus 495, or I wish it would have been 49. Yeah, I wish it was 495, that last problem. Without a helper, I might have said, "Hey Kim, let's take a look at the two pairs of problems that we have. What kind of pattern are you seeing that at least it's on the board? Maybe you didn't use, but what have we heard the class kind of using?" Put some words to that and then say, well, if that's kind of that pattern that you've just put words to, that you could keep the first number whole and add something that's a bit too big, and then, oh, you could just adjust back. What might be a good helper problem to follow that pattern for this problem? That's it.
Mhm.
That's what we mean by look back, like look up the string,
Mhm.
talk about the patterns, pull out of kids what they're thinking about the pattern they're seeing. It might
Mhm.
be the first time a kid starts to think about that pattern because they're just solving problems.
Yeah.
Maybe they've paid attention to kind of the strategy that you're modeling. Maybe they haven't, but that could be a moment for them to start to put words to it. I was just watching a problem string this morning that Holly did. Holly's a colleague of ours, a fantastic fourth grade teacher
Mhm.
at that point. And there were a couple of times where she did exactly that. She's like, let's put some words to this. And part of the reason that it's coming to mind today is the words they used were so just natural and help me, unprecise. Like it wasn't precise mathematical vocabulary. And to watch her just massage it into, what about the friendly number? Oh, you were getting to a friendly. Like she just
Mhm.
took what they said and then would like pop back just a little bit, and then they would kind of refine, and then she would just
Mhm.
kind of push a little and they'd refine. And by the end of it, the kids were using fantastically precise mathematical vocabulary, but in a very natural, yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Yeah. So when you are preparing a problem string, there's a lot of things that you can think about.
Hmm.
But we also offer problem strings and suggest some half sheets, some Kim's notes, some, what do we call them now? Problem string
I think we call them
facilitation.
facilitation notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that
And so
include the problem string with the
yeah.
little notes next to them and that sample final display.
Yeah. Uh-huh. But we suggest that you make them your own. You know your kids. And so you have to mesh the idea of what's happening in this problem string and
Hmm.
what do I know about my students.
Yeah, nice, nice. So, Kim, one of the things that we've noticed with teachers of younger students is that they'll look at a rec and rec problem string, a problem string that's intended to use a number rack or a rec and
Mhm.
rec,
Mhm.
and they will assume that they can. Well, maybe I'll just say it's for me for sure. I'll just get up there and start moving beads around, and then all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, which side should the beads start on?
Mhm.
Where should they end? Am I covering up some of the beads? Those are some things that you need to think about ahead of time. And we've tried to put those kind of notes in our pre-written strings
Uh-huh.
so that you're really clear what it should look like. And in fact, often we'll show, here's what the number X shows.
Start.
Yeah, when you start, here's what it would look like. And then as kids talk about their strategy, here's the movement that you would make.
Mhm.
And then here's kind of the end result that it would look like for a
Mhm.
problem. And so try to give teachers kind of that help because we had to really think through what that would look like.
I
And
mean,
so
yeah, much respect to kinder and first grade teachers who do it daily because I actually think it's more for me to think about than recording on a number line or
then
ratio table.
some of the
Yeah.
other models,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so we just encourage you to read through those notes and then practice a little bit. Like actually
Yeah.
put the number rack up, be aware of which beads you have to the right and to the left, and then which ones you're going to cover when. Just a little bit, be super good work to do in a PLC. Leaders, teachers, if you can grab a teaching partner and say, hey, just like, does this make sense for me to do this in this? Let me just practice it. Okay, yeah, that would be really good kind of pre-work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another thing to consider when you're planning for a problem string, when you're preparing, is what you need to consider when you're facilitating. Are you going to use color in any way to highlight anything on the board?
nice.
Are you what are your labels going to look like for your ratio tables? Where are you going to land numbers? What are you going to circle? What are you not going to circle? When are you going to circle?
When are you going
Uh,
to erase on a
when are you
ratio
going to
table?
erase? When are
Yeah.
you going to write equations or not?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
what are times that you're going to circulate? When are you going to narrow the amount of strategies that you choose?
Are
And
you
so,
gonna have kids write, or is it all without paper and pencil for this
yeah,
particular? Uh-huh,
yep,
that's a good
yeah,
one, yeah,
lots to
yeah.
think about.
And as you think about those things, consider noting those on your half sheet, Kim's notes, facilitation notes, whatever you're calling it. Note those things as you're planning, because if you're like me, you stand up and you're like, wait, what was I gonna?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you do the string or at the end, take a little note to yourself and
Mm-hmm.
keep those for next year so that you have that note then for you to use next year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so Kim, one of the other things that we've noticed is that we seem to be in an era, PowerPoints and electronic displays.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to go into classrooms and there was a whiteboard. Sometimes there was a document camera. Now I go into classrooms and there's often still some whiteboards, but there's often some sort of electronic display where
Mm-hmm.
it's either a big TV screen or, yeah, basically a big computer screen. And sometimes teachers write on that big computer screen with, like electronic marker or whatever. Sometimes teachers are using a tablet to write on, and it's sort of showing up. I'm okay with all of that. Again, I want you to sort of think. I invite you to think through what that means for your facilitation. But here's the thing that I would maybe ask you to consider is that often teachers are getting used to the idea that the lesson is sort of pre-prepared because they have this electronic delivery system. And so they're writing the problem in like a PowerPoint kind of fashion. So the problem string that we did today, you might be like, oh, well, of course, over the podcast, we can't see that. So, if you were doing it in a classroom, you would have created a PowerPoint where the first problem, 314 plus 400, would show up. And maybe it would show up off to the left. And so it would give me plenty of space to draw a number line. But I've even seen teachers put the problem on the left and then click forward, and a drawn number line, a pre-created number
Mm-hmm.
line shows up to the right. So if I could put a big red X over that, so not that. In fact, not even having the problem pre-show up. We think it's pretty important that this feels organic.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like kids are coming up with answers on the spot and that you're actually representing their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you're like, but Pam, Kim, didn't you just clearly tell us to plan what the end display is going to look like? And Kim just said that often it doesn't quite look like her carefully prepared one on that. Wouldn't it be better if we created this perfect display and we just revealed it a little bit at a time? And everyone shake your head and say, no, we're not suggesting that. We're actually suggesting recreating that display every single time. And I'm saying that as a high school teacher who taught 7 periods in a day. Every single time I would erase the board and recreate the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are a few times where I'll pre-create something to show up, but that's pretty rare. But let me give you an example. Sometimes I've done some geometry strings with dot paper. I'm not going to draw dots on my board every time because then I'm trying to erase and whatever. I'll project somehow dot paper, and then I'll draw stuff on there. So that sure, I might even provide the dot paper for kids so that they can recreate the shapes that are sort of happening. There are times where I'll project a grid on an axis, a coordinate axis, but many times I won't, and it depends. The thing that's always at the top of my head is, if I put this grid up here, is it going to inadvertently have kids counting by ones? And I don't want to do that. So I'm very careful to think about whether I'm putting a grid up or not. I don't want to promote that you could solve this problem just counting. That's counting strategies. I want to really promote relational thinking. So teachers, when you're doing like area models, if you're like, ooh, I'm just going to create all these exact to the dimensions and have them appear, highly recommend that you don't do that, that you actually redraw those arrays, even if they're not perfect, but you say out loud, hey, I'm trying to draw this to really look like a 30 by 42 or, or whatever it is. So the kids kind of help you make it look, and they get a sense and a feel for the proportionality because they watch you try to make things proportional. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, nice examples.
Yeah.
So we like to create sample final displays of what the board could look like. We also like to create half sheets so that what we figure out is important, that we want to emphasize. And though yours might differ from ours, but we have lots of examples of what both of those look like for you.
Yeah, and you can find example of those in all of our Building Powerful Mathematics online workshops, and you can also find them for every problem string in our problem string books. The ebook has them as well, where you literally can just like copy this half sheet, this facilitation notes that you can take with you as you facilitate your problem strings. You can also see examples of those in our Major Strategies ebook that you can get at mathisfigureoutable.com/big, B-I-G, because it's big news, big thing. So if you have not downloaded yet our free Major Strategies ebook, check that out. It's got sample problem strings where you literally can see what we're talking about, this example facilitation notes.
And if you are a lucky participant who's ever been in one of your Building Powerful Numeracy workshops, they've had a chance to see these half sheets as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
If you'd like to see the half sheet or the facilitation notes for the exact string that we did today in today's podcast, you can download that www.mathisfigureoutable.com/big. And this exact problem string is there with the facilitation notes and that sample final display that you can see there. Y'all, thanks for tuning in and teaching more and more real math. To find out more about the Math is Figureoutable movement, visit mathisfigureoutable.com and keep spreading the word that math is figureoutable. Y'all, thank you for listening and making math more figureoutable.
Remember, we'll be opening registration for the Math is Figureoutable Challenge soon. Mark your calendars from May 14th to 16th.
Hop on our email list to get all the details. Sign up at mathisfigureoutable.com/get-newsletter. We'll see you there.